Located on Bank Street, the Morgan County Archives has been a priceless fixture in our community since 1995. Created to serve as a permanent place to record and preserve the history of our community going back to 1819, the Archives is home to a wide variety of historical and genealogical, say that 3 times real fast, records. Today we're joined by John Allison, Morgan County archivist, and resident Stephen Decatur impressionist. John, it's
Right.
really great to have you with us.
It's good to be here, Tab. Thanks for asking me to come.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, John, you've served as the conservator and archivist at the Morgan County Archives for over 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And your time in this position, you've overseen major exhibits, including the Scottsboro Boys trial, and then most recently unveiled the exhibit Morgan County Comes of Age. From my understanding, you earned your undergraduate degree in history from the Birmingham Southern College, and obtained your master's degree in American history from the University of Maryland.
That's right.
I was looking over that the other day, and that your master's kind of surprised me. How did you end up in Maryland?
Well, honestly, the short answer is they gave me the best financial aid package.
Okay, all right.
But it was combined with, there was a professor I wanted to work with there, and also just, if you're a historian working in D.C., where the National Archives is, where the Library of Congress is, you got plenty of source material right there to work with. So that's all those things together added up to why I wanted to be in University of Maryland. It was a good experience.
Good. Has this been just a perfect fit for you?
Yeah, it really has. It's been a wonderful journey. I did not think I'd end up back in Decatur, when I embarked on my academic career, but just things worked out perfectly, and it's good. It's doing public history, working with the public, help them find historical material, and also just educating the public has been a dream come true in a lot of ways for me. Yeah.
There's a lot of information at the archives,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever new exhibits regarding old town or maybe Black history, I will receive an email from Dr. Ragland,
Mm-hmm.
Wilhelm.
Yeah.
And he encouraged me to go stop by and take a look. And Dr. Ragland, he's good to, whenever you visit the archives, you're supposed to sign the registry
Mm-hmm.
whenever you go in. And he's good to take a look and see if you've actually.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Well, so for the residents who may not be familiar with the archives, just tell what kind of services that y'all provide. Okay?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're primarily, we are a Department of County Government, and our primary role is to preserve, arrange, and make available to the public records with enduring value that have been produced by county government. So if you think of anything that goes on at the courthouse, eventually the records, when they think they don't need them for day-to-day operations, they archive them. So it's my job to take those, preserve them, but also some records have a shorter shelf life, and we schedule destruction of those things. But the things that are permanent or long-term, we arrange them for the public and make them available. So that's number one. Now, what kinds of things would people be looking for? We do get a lot of genealogical requests, of course, as you would expect, all the old probate records, marriage records, wills, birth records from a certain time period. But then we also have court records. Sometimes people have to look back at old criminal cases or old civil cases. We have that stuff. We also have property records. So a lot of times we get real busy in March and the beginning of April with people scrambling to get, property valuations from years gone past, So there's for tax season. So we have all that stuff. But then we also just cater to the curious and people who want to learn more about history. A lot of people want to learn about their homes, particularly historic homes. Sometimes we get people in who think they have a ghost in their house, and they want to seriously, and so they want to know if anything weird ever happened in the house. We can often tell you who used to live in your house, what they did for a living. So we get, particularly people in old Decatur are very interested in that. But there's just so many different uses. If you can think of something historical in the county, we can help you out with it. And so we also just try to make the place open for visitors, because we have several, like you said, several museum exhibits. And so we like to work with schools, with church groups, any kind of organization who just wants to come visit and find something to do.
So right across the street where the neighborhood Christian center is, my grandparents raised me, and my grandfather's physician whenever I was a child was Dr. Nash.
Okay.
And he worked at the Bank Street Hospital, where the neighborhood Christian center is now.
Right.
And it's really neat to go in there to visit with Tim and Pamela and some of the students, things of that nature, and let them kind of remind me what certain areas were.
Yeah.
Things
yeah. You can see it with a little bit of a description. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, so if a resident is doing genealogy research, what's the best way for them to get started whenever they come to the archives?
Sure. Well, we encourage people to find out what you can, as much, because if you just come in and say, well, I want to know more about Grandpa. Well, what's Grandpa's name? Well, we just called him Grandpa. Well, when did he live? I'm not sure. So gather as much as you can.
Right.
And because that's going to make your time more productive. But and also it can help us, particularly if you're going to be pulling some more obscure records, to give a call ahead of time. It is helpful, and we can begin to pull that information together for you so you can make the best of your time in the archives. But no appointments necessary. You don't have to do that. You can just come in anytime. We're open from Tuesday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. Now I am in there on Mondays, and I field emails and phone calls, but that's my day to sort of get caught up on business that we don't get a chance to during the week. So a lot of paperwork shuffling and reshelving of things that have been taken down. So a lot of that occurs on a Monday. But I'm in there. So if you absolutely have to get in on Monday, give me a call. We'll work something out. So.
Well, that's very kind of you. So I work with Susan Hood. She probably really runs the city, if the truth be told. She's a wonderful assistant. And she came in one Monday and shared about visiting a website, Find a Grave.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very helpful.
And I've started playing around with that, and took my family back, I believe, to about, around the 1860 period, something like that. We were, there's a cemetery that where Highway 101 and Old 24 intersect, and that was actually it's just 24.
Yeah.
But that was a really interesting site to visit.
And it is, and we have a number of the members of the Morgan County Genealogical Society who also keep their offices in the archives building. Those people have done a lot of work with that, and a lot of the information you see, Find a Grave is crowdsourced, so a lot of the photographs you see there, the obituaries that people add to that, a lot of the information that makes it really valuable has been added by volunteers, and we've got several people here in Morgan County who have done a lot of hard work on that site. So I'm glad it's useful. I'm glad you got some use out of it.
Yes, yeah. Well, so now you kind of shared that this spot was really made for you, and that you didn't think that you would end up returning to Decatur.
Right.
So you grew up in Decatur?
I did. I was born and raised here. Born in Decatur General Hospital in 1971, and spent my entire childhood here up through high school. Graduated from Decatur High in class of 1989. But then I went on to Birmingham Southern College, as you said, and kind of just decided in tossing around a bit, you know, I figured out, well, I want to stick with history. I think I can maybe make a go of that, you know. So that's what I did. Like I said, I got a grant to go study in London for a year. That was great. Then went to D.C. And University of Maryland College Park. And actually, you know, how did I end up in archival work? Well, there were a lot of people. I had a lot of contemporaries and colleagues who I thought had more on the ball than me, you know, and they were still adjunct professors struggling to make ends meet, and they were getting into their 50s, and I was just like, I don't know, maybe it's time to reevaluate. So I kind of backed off from the straight academic path and started looking for other avenues to use my desire for history and my knowledge, and that's how I kind of got into the line of work that I'm in now. So I'm just so pleased to be down here, back home in Alabama, and doing what I love, you know, and it's just been a good fit all the way around. Yeah.
Well, we're thrilled that you're back, and I get to attend a lot of unveiling of markers, historical markers, things of that nature. I think it's fair to say that most of the time, if not always, if your schedule will allow, you're there.
Yeah. I get consulted on most of it, even if I don't write them all. Usually they check in with me. I'm another set of eyes to look on things, but that's wonderful, and that's some great. That's a great thing. The marker programs that we have in this state through the Alabama Historical Commission, the Tourism Department, and Alabama Historical Association, they all kind of. And Senator Orr's been good to help us find funding for these things, and he's always very supportive, as are you and Chairman Long, and you know, so we've got a real supportive community, and it's a great way to inform the public of this. And I would encourage everyone, you see one of those, is if you're not going to, you know, get into a wreck, you know, pull over and take a look at that, at those markers, because there's some really remarkable stories.
We're working on one now for Dr. Mae Jemison.
Oh, right, great.
Yeah, for our viewers, Dr. Jemison, born here in Decatur, and so Peggy Towns, I guess Senator Orr likes it whenever she prepares the wording.
She does a great job. With you. On most, but not all. But yeah, usually she lets me take a look at her draft, and just to, you know, it's always good. Whenever I submit something, I like to have several sets of eyes on it. But yeah, Peggy's a treasure. You mentioned her and Dr. Ragland, and since I got here in 2006, it's been a community effort, but the two of them particularly have really helped us to reconstruct a lot of our African American history that had really not been told adequately. That's something that I think Decatur and Morgan County have done very well in the past 13, 14 years. You know, 15 years now. So it's been a pleasure to work with them and see these stories told finally the way that they should be. And I think it's great when we get to a point where we're not just talking about African American history. We're just talking about it's our history, it's our shared history.
Sure.
You know, so they're sort of reclaiming their rightful place, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of how we need to have them on together as guests.
Oh yeah. That'd be great. Yeah.
Well, so you talked about Ghost a while ago.
Yeah.
And I probably need to invite Phil Wiry to come as well. But any Ghost facts?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny that we really have. I've worked with the tourism department too, Decatur Morgan County Tourism, on a program they had called The Unknown, and then I think we're also working with the Pomeroy Foundation on a new marker program called the Legends and Lore series, and it's sort of delving into a lot of those tall tales and ghost stories and things like that, and that's a very interesting another interesting aspect of our history. And as old people kind of pass away, and you know, maybe some of these get changed or distorted, and well, of course that's part of the story too. But yeah, we've got ghosts on Bank Street. You know, we've got a ghost walk there. We've got Crybaby Holler, you know, which is just south of the city between here and I guess around the Flint area, which is a common tale around here. So it's been fun to kind of get involved in some of those folklore aspects as well of our history. And I'd like to encourage anybody out there, any of your viewers who have a good story, to come let us know, you know, because that's something we try to document as well.
Great, great. Well, now I'm sure that you have many stories that you've uncovered. What would you say would be maybe your most fascinating story?
Yeah, I think I heard you wanted to ask me this question, and I really think after a little bit of thought, I thought probably Lelia Seton Wilder Edmondson is the biggest story that nobody knows about. She was someone who lived here in Decatur. She was born in Ohio. Her dad was a Civil War soldier who died as a result of wounds that he received, I believe, at Chickamauga. And then she, her mother, and younger brother moved down here just after the war in the 1860s. Her uncle was a guy named Dr. Cantwell, and he owned the old State Bank building, and he lived in it as a residence, and they moved in there. So she lived there as a child, grew up, was a very bright young lady. This was a time in the 1860s when a lot of people were coming down from the north to try to make their fortunes here. Some of them could be classified as what we call carpetbaggers, but most of them seem to have had legitimate, you know, business interests they wanted to, you know, it looked like an opportunity, you know, a place where capital could be turned into something else. So she married a guy named Charles Rollin Wilder, who was from Cincinnati. And Mr. Wilder decided he wanted to be a cotton planter. And he bought up all the land that today we know of as Wolverine, General Electric, Point Mallard, one of the largest plantations around here. He did not know what he was doing. Anyway, he married her. He did not know what he was doing. He ran it into the ground. And when he passed away at a young age, Lelia was left with a mountain of debt. And all she could do was just try to sell off some of the land. So she worked with Major E.C. Gordon. This is a time when New Decatur was happening. I know you know this story. I don't know if your viewers do, but in 1888, a huge part of the land, you know, Decatur used to just be Old Decatur. And then this development company came in and wanted to develop Decatur into the Chicago of the South. And so this town of New Decatur wrapped around the old town of Decatur, and they thought it was going to be just really huge. So they wanted that land that was her farm that she'd inherited. So she was able to sell the land at a very high price when there was a big real estate bubble here. Then the yellow fever comes, and a lot of the investors pull out, and so the land is not worth what it was. So she ends up buying her own land back for pennies on the dollar. Then she goes on to turn it into a model plantation. She really takes care of the people who work for her, all her tenant farmers. She has 2 schools built there. The United States Department of Agriculture comes because she runs such a model farm. They call her the Cotton Queen of Alabama. And she goes on tour all over the world talking about, she's Alabama's delegate to the Paris exhibition. And then later on, so she's a great success at farming. Later on, she marries another guy named Colonel Edmondson and decides she wants to run for Congress. So she is she's actually the first woman in Alabama to run for Congress. And she ran against David C. Allman, one of the first women in the country. And she does quite well. She actually runs on a platform of, she's a farmer and she wants to run for the farmers. She hardly mentions women's rights at all. And she actually does quite well. I mean, she loses to David C. Allman, but anyway, just a remarkable woman. Then she ends up deeding the old State Bank to the American Legion. So that's who eventually deeds it to the city. So that's how the city of Decatur has that landmark. So she's just a remarkable person, and not that many people know about her. So we're going to try to, I'm writing a piece about her for Alabama Heritage, and we're going to try to get a marker for her as well here. So anyway, I would say she's the most remarkable story that no one really knows about.
First time I've heard it, John.
Yeah. So exactly,
Yeah.
you're the mayor, so we gotta get these stories out here. So
That's something. That's something. So I came in one Veterans Day at the archives, and just so happened, I hadn't been. You take the oath of office for serving as mayor at the beginning of your term in November, and then later that month, one of the first events that takes place is Veterans Day.
right, yeah,
And so there was a event at the archives, or a new display actually,
right,
for the veterans. And my timing of arriving, Wally Terry was there, and that display had some of the history as it relates to the Korean War,
yes,
and some of the Decatur residents who served in that war, to include Wally's father, Charles Riley,
right,
who was led Shorty's boys, and just a man of a wonderful encourager and
yeah,
author, many things, very wise man that's missed, who is missed. And Wally ended up sharing some of the stories of those guys that from Decatur that ended up going in to Korea. And normally people from a community wouldn't serve together. They would work for different battalions, things of that, units,
yeah,
things of that nature. But this group served together, as I understand, and they served in an engineering company.
right,
So there was a time whenever they were given orders to advance to a particular point, and as they were advancing, the South Koreans were retreating, and that was a real concern to them. And boy, I'm gonna, hopefully I'm right here. I'm gonna be close enough,
yeah,
so
yeah,
maybe our viewers will cut some grace, or provide some grace. I think Captain Walker was the leader, and he was really going to be a career man in the military, so he needed to follow the orders that he had been given to advance, and knowing that they were marching towards a certain death, that he ended up giving them to advance to such and such coordinates, to which they did, and so really that was a retreat.
yeah,
Those coordinates,
right,
and
right,
it ended up saving their lives.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And,
It's wonderful to hear Wally tell that story too. You know, the way his father told it to him, and but yeah, so many stories like that from that conflict and others, and we really want to try to gather as many of those stories as we can, because so many of the older gentlemen are passing away, and ladies who served in various capacities, and so we love to honor those stories. We've collected, people have been real good to donate artifacts to us, uniforms and things like that. So we're real grateful to the community for their support in honoring our veterans and our Gold Star families, you know, people who have lost loved ones. And so that's been a wonderful part of the job as well, and very humbling. You know.
Nice Gold Star plaque at the depot.
Yeah, and there is the blue. It's a Blue Star trail thing, because it's a part where so many people from several different wars embarked on trains to go on all these different journeys. So yeah,
As did our Korean vets.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, they went, and there may very well be a Blue Star right
Yeah.
there to the left.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I stand corrected on
Yeah.
that. Well, whenever you look to the future, what goals do you have for future developments at the archives?
Well, I think right now we do want to take advantage of technological advancements. You know, I think this pandemic has really proved to us, you know, a lot of this stuff needs to be digitized, and we need to be able to do a lot of things virtually. Hopefully, we're getting past this, but we need to think to the future. And so we want to make as much of it as accessible to the public as possible that way. And that also preserves our records as well. But in addition to that, I just really my passion is for continuing our historical outreach and gathering these kind of stories and engaging with the community. I don't want the archives to just be, this is a dusty place, and when you think about it, you come in and, and people, if you want to look at this, you can. I want to be out in the community with the marker programs, with education in the schools. I'd like to see more coordination with both our city and county schools and curricula, because when I see these young people who come in on field trips and you can see things clicking, the lights going on in their head when they actually realize, oh, that's a place near me. Oh, that's a place where, this is where I live. This is, it brings it home to them in a way that I think just reading it in a history book doesn't. So I'd like to see a lot more of that and more outreach. So that's kind of vague, but that's what I would like. That's what I see as our mission.
It's not vague at all. I think it's very thoughtful and wise. And boy, I had the lights going off as you were sharing the story a while ago, and the lady is definitely worthy of some type of marker or memorial to what she did, especially considering how things went with her father. How she rebounded there. Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's touch on this, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
So you are a Stephen Decatur impressionist.
Sure. I kind of inherited the job because the uniform fit me, I think.
It fits you very, very well. So give it a little, just not everyone knows the story behind Stephen Decatur.
Sure, yeah.
Can you kind of share
well,
that?
Stephen Decatur, of course, you may have noticed there are a lot of Decaturs across the country, and they are all named for Stephen Decatur, who was a naval hero. He was probably the first big naval hero, after John Paul Jones, I guess. But that was a revolutionary period. But in the United States national period afterward, a nation, and he's involved in a lot of the very first engagements that sort of cemented the United States as a world power. The Barbary pirates. This was on the north coast of Africa. They were always forcing nations to pay tribute to them, and Thomas Jefferson said, no, we're not going to put up with this anymore. I'm really shortening the history here. But Stephen Decatur led a lot of really remarkable and very brave expeditions against those people, and helped to really cement the United States as a real power on the world stage. And then he was also in the War of 1812, but a real hero of the early republic. And when he was killed prematurely in a duel, he was killed in a duel. There was a man who Stephen Decatur had served on his disciplinary hearing, and said that this guy had really not conducted himself well in an engagement. So he always held a grudge against Stephen Decatur. And so they had a duel in Bladensburg, Maryland, and Stephen Decatur was killed. And President Monroe, who was a great friend of Stephen Decatur's, was really grieving the loss of this young, hero and actually a very powerful man in the United States Navy at that time, and sort of declared, really encouraged communities all across the country to rename things in his honor. And this town, which had been previously called Rhodes Ferry, as it was incorporated in the 1820s, they said, well, let's call it Decatur after Stephen Decatur. So he never set foot here. Neither did General Daniel Morgan, for whom Morgan County is named, but we still remember those guys as well. But it's he's definitely worth reading about. He had a lot of good qualities. He was loved by his men. They respected him. He didn't have people do the fighting for him. He was right in the thick of it. So a lot of the qualities that we admire in people as Americans, Stephen Decatur personified those. And so I think we can be proud that our community's named after him.
John, you're a wonderful storyteller.
Well, thank you.
It's fiction then that I knew that President Monroe, I knew he had grieved.
Yeah.
They were dear friends. He greatly admired Stephen Decatur, as you mentioned, but there wasn't an act or anything to name one city in every state in the country Decatur.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, but now I do believe he did have a hand specifically in this one.
Okay, he encouraged.
Yeah, because he knew about this, and it was actually very, this is territory that had just opened up. It had just been ceded by the Cherokee. Decatur's a very strategic place on the Tennessee River, above the Muscle Shoals. So back then it was unnavigable. So this was a very strategic spot on the Tennessee River, and I think President Monroe had a hand in that, in making sure this was named after Stephen Decatur. Yeah.
Good. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing these stories, for visiting us, for what you do for Morgan County and preserving and gathering more history. We appreciate your leadership, and I hope we'll have something to talk about in the future where you'll come back.
Wonderful. My pleasure.
Very good.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, we want to say thank you for watching today. Remember that you can sign up for our digital newsletter by texting Decatur to 42828. And until next time, be safe and be kind. Thank you.